Hey everyone, I'm OTG197 and thanks for visiting my channel. On this channel, I do hardcore Nuzlockes, which I assume most of you know what those are, but for those unfamiliar, a Nuzlocke is a playthrough of a Pokemon game with self-imposed rules that are meant to greatly increase its difficulty. Not all Nuzlockes look the same, and the rules someone uses ultimately comes down to whatever they decide they want them to be. The most important thing about Nuzlocking is that however you choose to do them, you have fun. That being said, there are some baseline standard rules for a Nuzlocke. Those being that you can only catch the first Pokemon you encounter in any area. If a Pokemon faints, it cannot be used in battle again, and if you lose a battle, the run is over and you try again from the start. All rules implemented beyond that are up to the player and the experience they want to have. For my channel, I wanted to make this video going over the rules I use in my runs, to use as a point of reference and give my viewers a definitive and transparent understanding of how I do things here. On this channel, I specialize in Monotype hardcore Nuzlockes of the ROM hacks Sacred Gold, Storm Silver, and Renegade Platinum, meaning I will be running the game while only using Pokemon of a specific type. My goal is to complete a run using every single type in these games, and in addition to this, I want to rank the performance of each type in the respective games, and it is for this reason that I do things slightly different from other Nuzlockers. So we know the standard rules of a Nuzlocke, but what makes it a hardcore Nuzlocke? Well, let's just get into the rules I use and see what differentiates the two. First, let's go over the capture rules. Capture rule number 1. Only the first viable Pokemon of the type being used that is encountered in an area can be captured and used in battle. So, the standard rule of 1 capture per area, but limited to the specific type I am using in that run. Capture rule number 2. Gift Pokemon do not count as an area encounter. Now, this is a bit of a debated topic in the Nuzlocking community about if gift Pokemon count as your encounter and capture for an area. And I have always said they don't, for the simple reason that you quite literally neither encounter nor capture them. There's another reason I do it this way in my runs that I'll get into in a bit. Capture rule number 3 is just that in Renegade Platinum, the Jubilife egg can be reset to receive a viable encounter. This simply refers to the egg this NPC gives you in Jubilife. It has a random chance to be any of the baby Pokemon and can be soft reset, so if there are any baby Pokemon that are viable for the type being used, I can soft reset the egg until I receive one. Capture rule number 4 is that non-viable Pokemon can be captured for ulterior purposes, such as being an HM Mule, item farming, or in the case of Ho-Oh in Sacred Gold Storm Silver, it can be used to open the door in the Ruins of Alph, but they cannot be used in battle. There are no other capture rules, but I will now go into some capture clauses that I use. The first clause is the priority clause. The priority clause states that if there are multiple viable encounters for the type being used in a single area, if one of them currently has the type and the other doesn't, but will get it upon evolving, the one that currently has the type takes priority as that area's encounter. If both have it or both don't have it but will get it later, they are considered equally viable and hold no priority over one another. The second capture clause is the area clause. The area clause states that if a viable Pokemon for the type being used was not the first viable encounter in the only areas it or any member of its evolutionary line appears in, due to other Pokemon of its type being in those areas, after receiving the next gym badge, the first member of its line encountered in that area can be captured. This is to prevent the type from missing out on members during its run. Because these games put every Pokemon from Gen 1 through 4 in them, there are a lot of cases where all the Pokemon of a certain type, like Ice or Electric, just get thrown into the same areas, and because of this, without this clause, you wouldn't be able to use a lot of them. Since my goal is to evaluate the type's performance as a whole, I don't want any types missing out on members due to circumstances like this. And as mentioned before, this is another reason why I don't count gift Pokemon as area encounters. The last capture clause is what I call the modified species clause. A species clause is pretty standard in Nuzlockes and states that throughout the run you can only capture and use a single member of an evolutionary line, and if another one is your first encounter in a new area, you can run away and do re-encounters until you find a new one. I essentially use this rule, but do it slightly differently. The modified species clause states that only one Pokemon in an evolutionary line can be used at any time. However, if in a new area you encounter a Pokemon in an evolutionary line you have already caught, you can capture this new Pokemon and replace your current member of its line with it. However, the caveat being that you can only do this if the original member of its line is still alive and there are no other viable encounters in that area that you don't have. Why do I do this? Honestly, just because I find it fun. But if you do choose to capture it, it is a full commitment. You are stuck with it, even if it is worse than your original one. So those are all the capture rules and clauses. Now, let's get into the battle rules. Battle rule number 1, all battles must be played on set mode, meaning you won't be asked to switch after you take out an opponent's Pokemon. Battle rule number 2, no menu items can be used in battle, meaning no healing items, no X items, etc. The only exception being you can use Pokeballs when making a capture, and held items are allowed. Battle rule number 3, if a Pokemon faints, it is considered dead and can no longer be used in battle. Battle rule number 4. Only members of the type being ran can be used in trainer battles. Viable members that don't have the type yet, for example Eevee in a water run, can only be used against a wild Pokemon until they get the type. If the type being ran is unavailable at the start, a starter can be used until the first viable encounter can be captured. If this viable encounter does not yet have the type being ran, like Nidoran in a ground run, it can only be used until a viable encounter with the type can be captured, at which point the Pokemon that doesn't have the type yet can no longer be used against trainers until it gets it. Battle rule number 5. If a battle is lost, the run is over and must be restarted from the beginning. Battle rule number 6. No overleveling gym leaders or the league's highest level Pokemon at the start of the battle or for the league at the start of the league. This does not apply to gym leader rematches, however. Battle rule number 7. All trainers must be battled. Trainers can only be temporarily avoided to prevent breaking level caps, but must be battled when it is safe to do so. Additionally, rare candies can only be used after defeating all possible trainers before a gym or the league. And the only battle clause to mention is that I don't use legendaries. So those are all of my battle rules. Now let's quickly go over cheat codes that I do allow in my runs. First is an instant text cheat. This simply makes text go by faster. Next is the fast health bar cheat, which simply makes health bars drain faster. Then is the Pokemon Center animation skip, which just skips the healing animation at Pokemon Centers. Next is an Eevee IV checker cheat, which just lets me easily see my Pokemon's Eevees and Ivies. Then is the all medicine times 900 cheat, which gives me 900 of all medicine items. However, I have to trash everything except rare candies. Last is not one particular cheat, but a combination of similar cheats, which are just any that gives the max amount of an infinitely farmable resource, such as coins, battle points, berries, etc., but I can only use them after the resource becomes infinitely farmable and I have received it legitimately. All of these cheats are essentially just to save time and avoid pointless grinding, and any and all exceptions to these will be subject to circumstance. So those are all of my rules, but before I go, I want to quickly go over rule adjustments. So although the hope is to have runs for every type that follow the same rules and guidelines, the fact is, in some cases, this will be impossible for certain types. Under conditions deemed impossible for a type to succeed, they may be subject to a variety of rule adjustments, varying in severity. Needing rule adjustments will reflect negatively on a type's ranking, the degree of which will depend on how many stages of rule adjustments are needed. These stages of rule adjustments are as follows. Stage 1. Can fully use members that don't have the type yet, but will upon evolving. Stage 2. Can catch and use all viable encounters, even in repeated areas. Stage 3. Can choose their nature. Stage 4. High IVs in all stats. Stage 5. Increase level cap by 1. And Stage 6. Increase level cap by 3. Rule adjustments are subject to change within a run and can be unapplied if no longer needed. And with that, I have summed up all the rules and regulations I use in my hardcore Nuzlockes down to the fine details. I hope this video was informative for this channel and even gave you some ideas for your own runs. I hope you'll check out the runs on my channel and stick around for the many more to come. Thanks for watching and have a good one.